The semiconductor industry continues to see support in New York State and at the federal level. We'll be speaking with state officials on how the biggest successes of the industry played out this year. Hello and welcome to Empire State Weekly. I'm John Gray.
And I'm Jamie DeLine. New York continuing to see support for the growing semiconductor chip industry. This week, the Biden-Harris administration announcing over $6 billion is being set aside to fund Micron Technology. The funding comes from the CHIPS and Science Law that passed federally.
Senator Chuck Schumer, who helped secure this money, says that the investment is secure and is not able to be manipulated or changed by the upcoming Trump administration. He says the funding is key to New York's continued development.
When I conceived the CHIPS and Science bill, I had upstate New York in mind. We knew that manufacturing had left New York, and we wanted it to return. And that is now coming to fruition, from one end of the state to the other. And the I-90 corridor from Buffalo to Albany will be known as the Semiconductor Superhighway, where close to a quarter of all chips made in America will be made.
Joining us now to give additional insight on the development of the semiconductor industry here in New York State, Kevin Younis. He's the COO of Empire State Development. Kevin, thank you for coming in. Welcome back.
Yeah, thank you. Thanks for having me. Glad to be here.
Let's do our rudimentary, people who don't know what a semiconductor is, explain what that is.
Oh my goodness. This is a funny, I have this conversation with my mother. She's like, what is it you're doing again? What is, so semiconductors are very tiny transistors that allow your phone to do the things it does. And the smaller those little chips can be, the more things your phone can do. Sure. So, you know, your phone today has more computing power than put a man on the moon, you know, in the 1960s. Your phone today has more computing power than existed on the planet 50 years ago. And because we're making these chips smaller and smaller and smaller, almost on an atomic level, that means they could do more, you can put more and more chips into it, and it means it can do more and more stuff. It can remember more things, it can do more functions. And that's, semiconductors are in everything. There's sort of military implications, right, in planes and tanks, and there's every electronic device in the world has a semiconductor in it. It's pivotal, it's a central input to industry in the 21st century.
And I know there's been a lot of talk about making New York State the semiconductor hub.
Yeah.
Can you talk about that, and what exactly does that mean?
So, New York, we've been investing in semiconductors, I think, for quite a while. Particularly in Albany Nanotech is a big research institute here in the Albany area, and so as I think COVID really revealed to us that the supply chain sort of dependency on semiconductor manufacturing overseas. And why did that matter? Well, suddenly we couldn't get chips for cars. We couldn't get chips for the things that we all come to depend on every day. And so there was a realization that we were overly dependent on manufacturing overseas. And so the CHIPS Act, this federal CHIPS Act, $52 billion to bring semiconductor manufacturing was passed by Majority Leader Senator Chuck Schumer. And the Governor Hochul recognized that we have this incredible opportunity. We got to bring it back to the U.S. Let's bring it back here, right? So she passed what's called the Green CHIPS Act. It's a $10 billion incentive program to bring semiconductor manufacturing back to New York, to really grow it in New York. IBM is a historic semiconductor manufacturing company, but really focused on bringing more manufacturing back to the U.S. And that includes Micron, $100 billion investment in central New York. Global Foundries announced roughly a $12 billion investment in just north of here in Malta. And so bringing these jobs back to the U.S. and bring them to New York is really what we're trying to do.
How are we looking for the workforce? Because there's been a lot of, for those of us in the Albany media, we're seeing things where colleges are trying to ramp up and make sure that when those jobs become available, when you get the brick and mortar places up, and these are good paying jobs.
Yep.
Talk about that a little bit.
So what's cool about the semiconductor industry is you have these incredibly high-end engineering jobs, right? And New York has a very robust engineering infrastructure. We have, I think, 64, maybe have the wrong number, but 64 engineering degree conferring institutions, higher education institutions in New York. But what's really neat about this industry is 60% of the jobs don't require a 4-year degree, right? 2-year degrees, certification. So our community colleges can really ramp up and focus on providing opportunities for folks. The governor has made huge investments in workforce development. We created something called OnRamp, which is a program around advanced manufacturing, but targeted to 2-year degrees and lower to go into the semiconductor industry and other advanced manufacturing opportunities. But those jobs, even with a 2-year degree or under, pay really well. We're $60,000, $70,000, $80,000, $90,000, $100,000. The construction jobs pay extremely well, and there will be thousands of construction jobs for the next 2 decades around these projects easily. So incredible workforce opportunity. When I think about when the governor talked about why we focus on this industry, of course there's this national security implications that we've talked about, but really it's about jobs for New Yorkers, right? It really is. It's these opportunities, the 60% of jobs available to people with 2-year degrees or less, is why we focus on the industry. All the multiplier around an investment in a company like a Micron or Global Foundries, it is 5-6x both job creation and investment. So we say Micron's going to do $100 billion. That means there's going to be another $400 billion of investment. They'll do 9,000 jobs. There'll be another 40,000 jobs associated with this project in the supply chain. And so you focus on an opportunity like this because of the incredible economic impact that it can have on an entire region.
And looking ahead to 2025, what can we expect when it comes to the chip industry in New York State?
So both Global Foundries and Micron Global is beginning to fit out their new facility and fit out their existing facility. They'll start to ramp up their new production. Micron's going to break ground next year on their $100 billion manufacturing facility, roughly 1,400 acre campus. I think somebody told me it's a mile from when you build all 4 fabs to walk the length of these fabs, a mile of production facility. And so we expect to see real ramp up in both of those projects in the coming year. Last year, we created something called OnRamp. This we talked about it earlier, this advanced manufacturing workforce training programs. And the goal here is 4 workforce training centers around upstate. And so we are currently reviewing the applications for those centers, and we expect that we're going to start moving forward with them in the coming year, which I think is a big move.
And last question, we've seen it on the negative side where the big factory closes and you say, well, it's not just those people, it's the town, it's the florist, it's the dry cleaner, they all get hurt. This is the opposite in a good way, isn't it?
Yeah.
I mean, like just Global Foundries, where we're doing stories up here in Albany on them wanting to do this massive housing development in Malta, which is right nearby. As these jobs come in, and those 60, 70,000, it's going to help people who have nothing to do with the semiconductor industry because they're going to have to support that, right?
Yeah, I mean, all the inputs that go into it, there's the direct inputs, right? The folks that make the wafers that they make the chips on. But there's also people that are going to be running hotels and restaurants and delivering pizzas, right? And doing all the things that come with an economy that's growing. I mean, Central New York estimates are like 20 to 30% population growth in the next 15 years.
That's amazing.
In a region that's seen either stagnation or reduction in the past generation, right? And so I'm from the Syracuse area, and so to be part of that moment in Syracuse is very special to me as a public servant, but also as a kid that grew up on the south side of Syracuse. I love to be involved in this opportunity, and so excited to see it come together.
And you probably have good dinosaur barbecue as well. Right?
I definitely do. Yeah.
Kevin, thanks for coming in.
Yeah, my
much.
pleasure.
Again,
My pleasure.
Exciting
Nice
stuff
talking
in
with you.
2025.
Cool. Thank you.
For some of this holiday season, it's not exactly merry or bright. When we come back, we'll hear from the State Office of Mental Health on the resources that they're offering and giving to those who might be struggling this time of year.
If you have a comment or story idea, let us know. You can email us at news@news10.com. You can also reach out on X at WTEN.
Welcome back to Empire State Weekly. For some, the holidays are a wonderful season of joy and a time for loved ones.
But for others, this time of year can be stressful and can increase the struggle with mental health. According to a recent survey from Tonker Research, 56% of respondents say they feel pressure to spend money during the holiday. The most common sources of pressure are from family, friends, and social media.
Another study from the Ohio State University found that 46% of respondents say they don't get enough alone time during this time of year. All of this coming as some are calling for changes in the state's response to mental health issues. The Mental Health Association in New York State says they want the state to improve staffing shortages and increase the amount of pay that mental health workers get. They also want to see better support for those with mental health issues who leave hospitals, prisons, or jails.
Joining us now to give additional insight on the resources available to help those in need is Dr. Audrey Trevino-Arazo, the Associate Commissioner for the Office of Prevention and Health Initiatives at the Office of Mental Health. Thank you so much for coming on.
Oh, thank you so much for having me.
So let's talk about mental health. I know this time of year is very stressful. Some people have seasonal depression. What are some of the signs and symptoms that people should look out for?
Yeah, mental health can affect every part of your well-being, Jamie, not just your thoughts and your emotions. And I think that while many of us take steps to stay physically healthy, the same approach isn't always used with mental health. So it does beg reinforcing that we have to take care of our bodies in the same way that we take care of our minds. Because not just during the holiday season, but especially during the holiday season, stress is an everyday part of life. And constant stress can absolutely lead to emotional distress. It can negatively impact the way that we make decisions and really ultimately can lead to physical health issues, right? So I think that's why it's so important to find ways to manage stress in the moment and prepare for the eventual stress that will come up in the future.
And how exactly do we help to manage this stress that we're feeling?
Now, one of the things that's important for us to recognize is that our body keeps the score when we're stressed out, and especially when we've gone through trauma. So really being attuned to what our body is saying, if we're having difficulties sleeping, if we're having difficulties with eating in the right way, if we feel like we're withdrawing from others, that's the time to really seek pathways to support. It's important that the help that you seek is important and relevant for you and that it feels comfortable for you, right? Because help is only help if it helps. So if trusting others and engaging in supportive counseling is one way, fantastic. If it's engaging in deep breathing, meditation, yoga, that's also an opportunity. If it's engaging in faith-based or spiritual ways to maintain your well-being and your wellness, then of course we want to encourage you to do what feels right and organic for you.
And I know that during Governor Hochul's State of the State, she was talking about just how important mental health is, and she announced a lot of initiatives. Can you talk about what the state is doing on the mental health front?
For sure. Under Governor Hochul's leadership, New York really is making historic investments to strengthen and transform our mental health system to increase access to services. That is really, really clear. And our current budget builds upon the landmark billion multi-year plan that she's already established, which is adding capacity system-wide. It's expanding programs that have a record of success, evidence-based initiatives. One initiative is really expanding school-based mental health clinics statewide. It's bringing community-based care to the place where we know young people spend the most of their time. That brings with it an investment of $19 million in this year's budget. And our governor and our commissioner, Dr. Ann Sullivan, are very clear. Any school in the state that wants to offer mental health care can do so, and they can partner with a licensed provider. We also want to focus on bringing support to our littlest of New Yorkers through implementing the Healthy Steps program in more pediatric offices statewide. And Jamie, it's such a wonderful program because it pairs pediatricians with a child developmental specialist embedded right in their office to provide universal services for children up to the age of 5 and their families during well-child visits, right? So it's a non-stigmatizing way to interact with families in a really critical time. OMH is supporting now nearly 100 sites statewide, and we're on track fabulously to serve 350,000 children annually by 2027. We're also tripling the number of certified community behavioral health clinics where we can provide a place for New Yorkers to access integrated services to treat their substance use, their mental health, their physical health services, all in one convenient location. We're establishing crisis stabilization services because we know that we need to provide care urgently and immediately for those who are in a behavioral health crisis and really to divert them away from higher levels of care and unnecessary emergency room visits. We're expanding our mobile crisis team statewide, and that delivers high-quality, person-centered, trauma-informed services that are both linguistically and culturally competent. So I think we're doing a whole heck of a lot. We're also building inpatient capacity, and we'll have 200 new beds at state-operated psychiatric centers with an additional 200 beds already included in this budget and now under development. We've also added capacity by restoring 517 inpatient beds at community-based hospitals. So we're really excited about those continuum of expansions.
And I understand that the state has a brand new campaign that's being rolled out. Can you talk about Be Well and what it is for people that have no idea what it is?
Absolutely. So our Office of Prevention and Health Initiatives really has a laser focus on promoting initiatives that truly get more upstream in our efforts to prevent mental illness. And we really have a focus on overall wellness, community outreach, and public education so that we can reduce the stigma of seeking mental health services. And we're really excited because Be Well supports those efforts really nicely. We want to help New Yorkers better understand the importance of mental wellness and the impacts of stress and trauma. So Be Well is a statewide public awareness campaign that provides information in very lay language, information on self-care, calming strategies, tips on how to support your resilience. What's neat about Be Well is that it also provides really small steps. They don't have to be big. They can be small that you can take towards focusing on your wellness. It includes information on how stress affects the body, the impact of trauma, how you can use breathing as a calming technique, how you can practice mindfulness, gratitude, really being intentional about finding ways to build your resilience and strategies to cope. And we're excited that it'll be offered in both English and Spanish. It's going to be on social media, digital platforms, public transit, billboards. And we want to make sure that through our Be Well initiative, that we can connect New Yorkers to other statewide resources like 988, which is our suicide and crisis lifeline, the New York State Trauma Informed Network and Resource Center, which is another initiative that my office supports, because it's all about making sure that you're aware of what's out there to support your wellness.
Well, thank you so much. We always appreciate having you on. Thank you.
Thank you so much.
A reminder, if you are in crisis, please call the Suicide and Crisis Hotline at 988 or contact the crisis text line by texting 741-741. As we look ahead to the new year, education advocates focusing on cell phone use in classrooms. Hear from the New York State United Teachers Union on what they'd like to see change.
Welcome back. Well, we're right around the holidays now. Kids come back from break. Parents probably not thinking about the new school year. Some education advocates are, though. They have their wish list ready for the 2025-2026 school year.
I caught up with New York United teachers on what they're hoping to see from lawmakers. Increased funding for BOCES career and technical education is a top priority for NYSUT. It's something the teachers union is hoping Governor Kathy Hochul will include in her state budget.
We see in BOCES that I visit across the state that there are kids on long waiting lists for programs like health careers, and yet we have these long workforce shortages in these same areas. So it doesn't really make a whole lot of sense that we have a high demand for people to enter these careers and we can't create a funding structure to make sure that we give kids access to these programs.
The New York State Board of Regents also prioritizing BOCES, calling for $53.8 million to increase the salary limit for BOCES aid to enable more students to participate in programs. The board also wants a $2 billion increase in state aid. New York State Education Commissioner Betty Rosa saying in part, quote, "This year's budget and legislative priorities will fund initiatives across the board to enhance New York students' educations, open pathways to further learning, and improve the caliber of our workforce for years to come. When it comes to the governor's priorities, she'll be detailing them in her annual State of the State address in January."
Stick around, we'll be back with a look at the week ahead in just a bit.
If you have a comment or story idea, let us know. You can email us at news@news10.com. You can also reach out on X, formerly known as Twitter, at WTEN.
Finally, at Empire State Weekly, this past year we saw significant movement in the legal cannabis industry. Consider a year ago there were roughly 24 adult use retail stores, but now we have over 200.
The industry is also on track to reach $1 billion in sales by the end of the year. With a sales tax of around 10%, that means a significant portion of that billion is going back into New York State. Next week, we'll speak with the Office of Cannabis Management on the progress they've made.
For now, from all of us here at Empire State Weekly, I'm John Gray.
And I'm Jamie DeLine. We'll see you here next week.
Quick reminder, don't forget you can watch this TV show all over New York State. Here's the full schedule of Empire State Weekly on 10 TV stations across the great state of New York.